Hello and welcome to our fourth video in Policy Debate 101. In this video, we'll go over the use of evidence in debate. First, we'll look at the theory. Why do we use evidence and how do we introduce it into a debate? Next, we'll talk about what evidence looks like and how to compare evidence of competing quality. Lastly, we'll talk about what good evidence looks like and how to conduct your own research. First, why do we use evidence? First, it's to elevate the discussion. Evidence is one of the main things that distinguishes a debate from an argument. Second, knowledge is power. Many people spend their entire lives investigating topics and know more about them than you do. Use their expertise and learn from them. Don't think you know it all yourself. The third is credibility. Who should the judge trust on a topic? A high schooler or an expert from Harvard University? Encouraging the use of evidence holds debaters to a higher standard for their arguments. You're expected to engage with articles and research that guide public policy debates in city, county, state, and national policy discussions, making you an informed citizen and advocate. And lastly, reading scholarly material is good for you. It helps develop reading skills, expands your vocabulary, improves your writing skills, and expands your knowledge base about what you're reading about. You likely make arguments all the time, but most of them are not fully formed thoughts. A complete argument has three parts. First, it makes a claim. In this example, we'll say that pasta is from China, not Italy. Second, you need to cite your evidence. In this case, we have a study from Mr. Smith in 2017 that says that we're correct. And third, you need to quote the evidence. In this case, that archaeology proves that the Chinese invented pasta, which then came to Italy with Marco Polo. So how do you use evidence in a policy debate round? Well, we use the same structure to build an argument when presenting evidence. Reading evidence is never, I repeat, never a substitute for making an argument, but it can provide the arguments you do make with detail, clarity, and credibility. During the constructive speeches, students should read directly from the evidence they want to introduce into the round, from what we call cards. This evidence is usually organized in the following format, which should seem similar to the way we construct an argument. First, a claim, which is a one-sentence description of the argument you're trying to make. Second, will be the source. Who are you quoting, and when did they write it? You should include a full academic citation, but you don't have to read all of that in the round, unless questioned on the credibility of your research. And lastly, the evidence itself. Choose the paragraph you want to read, cut and paste into a document, use a highlighter to pick the parts that you think are important and want to read into the round, and do so. It's important to provide the context of the evidence you're citing, not merely the quotes you want the judge to hear. Debaters often refer to their evidence as cards. This language and the format of evidence today is largely a result of how people debated before the internet. Students would identify part of a book or newspaper they'd like to use in round. They'd use a copier and then tape or glue it onto an index card or piece of paper. They'd write the academic citation and the claims they were making in the margins of the page, and the files would then be organized in filing boxes or expandable files. So how do you introduce evidence into a debate? Before the round, find or select a paragraph you think makes an important point, and highlight the key arguments in that section of text. Once you're in the round, make a claim, identify where your information is coming from, including the source and the year, and then read the key points you highlighted from the source of your information. Here is a sample piece of evidence. At the top, there is a claim. The global economy is unstable. Second, there is a citation, MUI 2015. That's all you would have to read during a debate round. but having the complete academic citation as a reference point if your evidence is challenged is also necessary. Lastly, there's a block of text. This is the article that the debater wants to quote. They have underlined and bolded key parts that they think offer supporting evidence for the initial claim. The global economy is unstable. Stringing together multiple pieces of evidence constructed with a claim, a citation, and a warrant can be put together to form a coherent argument and later a coherent case. In the era of fake news, it is more important than ever to present your evidence in context with a full citation describing where you got it. Context allows the other team and potentially the judge to read your evidence and A, see if it says what you claim it does, B, debate the meaning of the text, read the parts of the paragraph you didn't read, and contest the author's conclusion, and C, compare pieces of evidence that contradict each other. Debates with directly contradicting claims and pieces of evidence provide a clash of ideas that is often the most stimulating and the most educational. Sometimes evidence might seem good on the surface, but isn't conclusive or credible. Let's take this piece of evidence as an example. The claim is, the economy is awesome. This is from Smith in 2008. It reads, while the stock market has gone up and down, it hasn't impacted me that much. I have a job, customers, and a steady income, so the economy can't be that bad, right? This evidence, when taken in context and actually read, is terrible. It talks about the experience of a single individual during an economic decline almost 10 years ago and isn't even very conclusive. However, the claim it makes, the economy is awesome, is hard to refute without the date, context, and substance of the article in question. Let's talk about evidence analysis. The following is a piece of evidence from a congressional testimony about felon disenfranchisement and their reintegration into society. The evidence supports the claim that a focus on oneself versus a focus on one's self in context of a community is hurt by taking away their rights after they leave prison. However, if you look at the parts they didn't choose to read, highlighted in red, it offers two convincing alternative causes that are, quote, critical to a person's successful transition from prisoner to citizen. Reading this evidence in context with the underlined and ununderlined parts of the evidence shows the actual quality and the author's conclusion, not what the other team wants you to think. In many debates, there are pieces of evidence with directly competing claims. For example, global warming is real and global warming is fake. The global warming is real evidence argues that 97% of scientists agree with it, and that climate data supports their analysis, that humans are responsible, specifically the burning of fossil fuels, and offers that sea levels have already risen as proof of their analysis. The global warming deniers say that scientists are simply participating in groupthink, and that the world is naturally warming, and that humans are not responsible. They also will argue that there is no impact to an increase in temperature. The difference? One is from the Federation of American Scientists from this year, and the other is from an oil company website. The use of a citation to discredit or reinforce the credibility of evidence is one of the simplest ways to resolve competing interpretations of different pieces of evidence. But without the complete context of the evidence and its citation, it's otherwise impossible to resolve competing claims. So what is good evidence? Well, first, it will come from a qualified source. This could be an academic journal, the public statement of someone involved in the issue, or another trustworthy source. Newspapers are often good places to start, especially when talking about current events. Second, good evidence is conclusive. Instead of just stating that in arguments that are for a position and against a position, good evidence states why one side is right. Evidence that can draw comparisons for you is even better. Third, good evidence has multiple warrants or reasons why the claim you're trying to prove is true. And lastly, good evidence is often recent. The world changes, and while some things remain the same, many other things don't. Older evidence can still be credible if it's about ideas, not events, which don't change as frequently. Let's talk a little bit about research. When you start developing your own arguments, you'll first want to know where to look. Check out Google Scholar, Project Muse, or other online databases of scholarly journals. Second, you should look at books. Yes, I do mean physical books that are still in existence and are a great place to look for evidence. There are more than 15 large universities in the DC area with great libraries full of information you aren't using yet. Third, I'd look at highly circulated regional newspapers, especially for current events. This means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Dallas Morning News, or other regionally well-circulated newspapers, not partisan journalism. Lastly, I'd look at think tanks, the Congressional Research Service, or other highly research-oriented organizations. This includes things like the Brookings Institution, the Heritage Foundation, Cato, the American Enterprise Institute, the Center for American Progress, or the Pew Research Trust. Lastly, you'll probably want to get some tips about how to conduct your own research. First and foremost, outline the argument you want to make before you start Googling. Second, search for people who've made the same argument you're trying to make, such as politicians or think tanks. Use quotations and the plus sign to enhance your Google searches. Quotes can give you articles that use the same exact terms, and plus signs bring together terms that wouldn't normally be found together in the same article. Next, look at the citations of the research you already have. They have likely cited other articles that you can read. Lastly, don't be afraid to consult your coach or your librarian. The librarian at your school is literally paid to help you find information. If you're still struggling, don't be afraid to shoot me an email.